if you live in the UK and you're over 22 years old and working, plus a few other qualifiers, then you'll be auto-enrolled by your employer into a workplace pension. Now, unfortunately, so many of these are really poor quality, including the one that I was with my previous employer, so I ditched it. Here's how I came to that decision and what I did instead. So just before we go any further, I'm not a financial expert. I don't claim to be. I'm just an average Joe. If you're looking to make some kind of large financial decision and don't feel comfortable doing it on your own, then please do seek professional advice from someone who's qualified and has experience in the area. This channel is simply documenting my own journey to take control of my personal finances and build wealth. So hit the subscribe button if you're interested in joining on that journey. So before we go any further, I will just clarify that I think the pension tax wrapper is amazing. In the UK, I don't think many people realise how lucky we are with the different ways that we can save and invest really efficiently and with pretty generous allowances compared to many other countries. So the image on the screen highlights some of those benefits. So if you want to get £100 into a pension with a salary sacrifice scheme, it costs you less than £100 of your take-home pay to get that invested, and then that could be compounding on your behalf. So if you wanted to invest after tax as a basic rate taxpayer, you might first be hit with a 20% income tax, 8% national insurance, 9% student loans, so you're already down 37% before you even see a penny in your account. So for every £100 that you get paid, you get £63 into your pocket, which you can then invest. Whereas with a pension, a lot of pension wrappers allow you to do what's known as a salary sacrifice scheme. So that means you can invest the money before the tax is taken out. So that £100 that you would have been taxed on and then being put £63 into an investment, you can put that full £100 into an investment upfront. So there's no change to your take-home pay from that, but you get more money invested on your behalf. So why did I ditch my workplace pension? Well, it really came down to two reasons. The first was fees, and the second was the investment choice available. So when your employer signs you up for a workplace pension with a specific provider, you get put into one of their kind of default funds. These sometimes vary. They'll sometimes change your allocation depending on your age. And what's shown here on the screen was the default one that I was put into, which is pretty bog standard for the kind of fund that you'd be put into. Now, I've titled this as kind of the fake sales patter, and that's because really from the platform that's providing this workplace pension, they're more interested in getting new customers in the form of companies than they are in individuals. So they'll often attract one of these companies by offering some kind of discount to employees. So for example, the platform that I was with offered a discount of about 0.26% on the kind of total platform fees. And that's because, it's much bigger business for these platforms to attract a company that might have hundreds or even thousands of employees that will continuously be putting money under the management of this company every month than it is to attract a handful of individual clients. Now, it sounds great so far, but that's until you start looking at the actual funds available on these platforms. Now, I don't really know why. I've had two different workplace pensions, but they tend to have a smaller choice of funds available, and they tend to have higher fees than if you were just using a normal kind of self-invested personal pension wrapper rather than having this kind of workplace pension wrapper, which is effectively the same thing, but appears to be just a way for companies to charge extra fees on top. Now, there is a cap imposed by the government of around 0.75% on the maximum charge that these platforms can have, and that's fine. But with the platform that I had, if I wanted to invest in a global index fund, which is basically what I wanted to do, and have it weighted to match most global index funds rather than this kind of default UK bias that we get, then I'd be looking to pay funds for around 1%. And that's with the discount applied from my employer. Just for a bit of entertainment, I looked up what the most expensive one was as well. And the most expensive fund I could buy, and this is with the employer discount again, was 2.734%. So you're paying really hefty fees for the type of funds that are available. Now, when we start talking about fees, it's worth understanding the impact of fees, because 0.5% here, 1% there doesn't sound too much. But if we look at, say, hedge funds, which are notorious for charging high fees, there used to be a popular fee model known as the 2 and 20 model. So 2% of the assets per year was the fee that you'd pay to the hedge fund, and 20% of any performance. So if it gains 10% in a year, you would pay 2% of that gain to the hedge fund. But if we compare, say, a flat 1% change, it doesn't sound too bad, but if we play it out over a full working career, so if we assume someone earns £30,000 per year for their entire career, and they put in 5% plus the 3% match from the employer for a total of 8%, now that's a pretty bog standard auto-enrollment pension contribution. And if we also assume 5% real growth from those investments per year, we can see that by the age of 60, when you might be starting to think about accessing some of this pension, then that 1% extra fee will have cost you £60,000. And I'm personally not prepared to pay £60,000 And that's a low end estimate for my pension to be held. And that kind of ties into the second reason as well, the investment choice. So Standard Life, which is where I've taken these screenshots from, and this is the provider that I had my second workplace pension with, they offer around 300 options for me to invest in. And to be honest, that's a tiny fraction of the number that you'd find if you, say, had a self-invested personal pension. So I was looking for, as I mentioned before, a global index fund. Most of the ones I could find available were ESG versions of that, so environmental, social, and governance, so they're kind of pre-filtered funds. So I've shown here one of the Vanguard funds that I could find on the platform, and you can see that the fee for that is over 1% per annum. Whereas you can see that if I found the same fund on the Vanguard platform, then the fees are only 0.2% per year, plus there's a 0.15% platform fee. So that means that to hold the same fund, I'd only be paying a third of the fees if I held it on the Vanguard platform compared to if I held it in my workplace pension. And as we've seen from that 1% example, that will add up to tens of thousands of pounds over your lifetime if you invested in that fund. So here's the tricky part. What did I do about it? So my employer wouldn't pay into a pension wrapper of my choice. It had to be the company workplace pension wrapper, which in this instance was Standard Life. So I did what was known as a transfer. So I did a partial transfer rather than a full transfer. So I transferred all of the money from my workplace pension, except for £1, which kept the pension open, into a self-invested personal pension. Now, I personally, at the time when I was doing the research for this, ended up using AJ Bell. To be honest, if I was doing it again now, I'd probably pick a different platform. And I may move it again because it's come to my attention that some of the fee landscape has changed since I made this decision. So by keeping the Standard Life workplace pension open, it meant that my employer could still play into my workplace pension, and I could still claim that sort of employer's free contribution that they give you. So if I was contributing 5% and my employer contributing 3%, I'd lose that 3% if I wasn't paying into the Standard Life workplace pension wrapper. Now, the problem I had personally with this is that, and again, this varies depending on the platform, unfortunately, Standard Life only let you transfer out every 3 years. So that meant I had to build up 3 years of contributions in my pension, and then I could do one of these partial transfers out. And then I'd have to just keep contributing for another 3 years and then do another partial transfer out, so on and so forth. So I had to put up with quite a lot of paying these kind of higher fees just to claim that extra allowance from my employer. Now, the reason that I chose AJ Bell at the time was because I wasn't going to be making regular contributions. So it was just going to be every 3 years I was making a purchase of a global index fund in my pension, and then that was it. So I didn't mind paying a higher transaction fee because I was making very few transactions in return for a lower overall platform fee. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this landscape has changed slightly, and some of the flat fee pension providers would now be more beneficial for me because my pension has grown a little bit bigger. In particular, I've been looking at Interactive Investor at the moment, but again, the best platform is going to be specific to you, and that's because it will depend on your pension size, how many contributions you're making, all these kind of variables that you're going to need to think about if you want to do something similar. I'll often plug the most useful resources when I come across them, and frankly, I found no better comparison tool than the Monevator website. So I'll put a link to it in the description if you want to compare a platform to your current workplace pension for the fees. So I'll just wrap this up and keep it nice and short and sweet there. If you found this content helpful, then please hit the subscribe button for more content. This is following my personal journey, so I try and revolutionize my personal finance and build wealth. So I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.